My name is Diana. I'm 32 years old. I manage operations for a restaurant group that serves nearly 3,000 guests every single week across 4 different locations. Restaurants are my life. I know exactly how a dinner service works, from the kitchen line to the final check on the table. So when my parents suddenly called me after 3 years of complete silence and invited me to dinner to make amends, there was one question I should have asked before saying yes. Who else is coming? I never asked. And that mistake changed everything. 40 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of one of the most expensive restaurants in town, the Belvedere. My mother had promised it would only be the 4 of us, just mom, dad, my sister Brooke, and me. A quiet dinner, a chance to heal. But the moment I stepped into the parking lot, my stomach dropped. I recognized far more cars than I should have. My father's truck, my mother's sedan, my Aunt Linda's Buick, my Uncle Greg's SUV, Brooke's hatchback, and several others. I counted 9 vehicles. This wasn't a family dinner. It was something else, something they never told me. I sat inside my Honda for almost 2 minutes. Part of me wanted to leave, drive home, forget the invitation, forget all of them. But another part of me, the little girl who still remembered baking cornbread with her mother, wanted to believe people could change. So I locked my car, straightened my blouse, and walked inside. The hostess smiled politely. Mayfield party? I nodded. Your group is already seated. Already seated. That meant they'd been here for a while. As she led me through the restaurant, I could already hear laughter echoing through the private dining room. Then I turned the corner, and everything made sense. 16 people, not 4. 16. Every chair was occupied except one, waiting for me. The table overflowed with lobster tails, premium Wagyu steaks, towering seafood platters, and expensive wine that had already been poured. My family wasn't waiting for me. They had already started celebrating. The hostess quietly leaned toward me before walking away. Your father left a credit card to reserve the room. I nodded. That tiny detail stayed in the back of my mind, because people who plan to pay don't usually make a point of mentioning their credit card. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Then my mother stood up. Diana. She opened her arms as if nothing had ever happened, as if 3 years of silence had never existed. The entire table actually applauded. I forced a smile. I thought this was just the 4 of us. Mom laughed softly. Oh, sweetheart. Once everyone heard you were coming, they all wanted to be here. Family. Always family. I looked around the room. Aunts, uncles, cousins. I took my seat at the far end of the table, the only empty chair, almost as if it had been reserved specifically for me. Across from me sat my father. He smiled. Not warmly, confidently, like a man who believed the evening was already under control. My mother reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. We're finally together again, she said, just like old times. I looked around the room. Nothing about this felt like old times. It felt staged. Every plate on the table told the same story: lobster tails, prime Wagyu, imported cheese, fresh oysters, and sitting proudly in the center, a bottle of Bordeaux I immediately recognized. I'd seen it during supplier tastings, retail price around $400, and it was already half empty. They hadn't been waiting for me. They'd been ordering. For a while. Dad raised his glass. Tonight is about family. Everyone cheered. I simply lifted my sparkling water, the only thing in front of me, the only thing I intended to order. A young waiter approached. His name tag read, Nathan. He couldn't have been older than 20. Nervous, professional, trying very hard to keep 16 demanding guests happy. I knew that look. Because years ago, I had been Nathan. Dad waved him over. Without opening a menu, he started ordering more food. Another round of lobster. 2 more Wagyu platters. And another bottle of the Grand Cru. The good one. Nathan nodded politely. Then Dad pulled out his wallet. He flashed his credit card with a confident smile. Put it on this. We're celebrating. Nathan thanked him and walked away. I watched my father slip the card back into his wallet. Something about that moment didn't sit right. My father had spent his entire life arguing over prices. I'd watched him return tools because they were $2 cheaper somewhere else. He wasn't the kind of man who casually ordered luxury wine, unless someone else was expected to pay. Conversation drifted around the table. At first, it sounded harmless. Then the comments began. Aunt Linda smiled at me. It must be nice making executive money. I smiled politely. It's a lot of work. She laughed. I'm sure it is. But some of us still have to worry about bills. A few people chuckled. Brooke looked up from her phone. You've always been the successful one. The words sounded like praise, but they weren't. Every compliment carried the same hidden message. You have money? We don't. Remember that. My mother joined in. We're all so proud of everything you've accomplished. You've done incredibly well. Again, it sounded supportive, but after years of knowing my family, I heard what they were really saying. You can afford this. You should help. Family takes care of family. The phrase hadn't been spoken yet, but it was hanging over the table like invisible smoke. Nathan returned with more food, more lobster, more steak, another expensive bottle of wine. Everyone dug in immediately. Nobody looked at the prices. Nobody hesitated because nobody believed they were paying. Nathan quietly stopped beside me. And for you, ma'am? Just sparkling water. He looked surprised. No entree? No, thank you. Just water. He nodded. There wasn't even a flicker of judgment in his face, only understanding. A few minutes later, he returned with another bottle of sparkling water. Without asking, he quietly refilled my glass. Anything else? I smiled. No. You're doing a great job. For just a second, his shoulders relaxed. He smiled back. Thank you. Then he hurried away to refill someone else's wine. Watching Nathan brought back memories I'd spent years trying to forget. Being 17, working double shifts, counting tips at midnight, handing most of them to my parents before I ever bought anything for myself. Back then, I believed helping my family meant sacrificing everything. I thought love was measured by how much you gave away. I didn't realize I was teaching them that my wallet would always be open. Around me, the conversation became sharper, more personal. Uncle Greg leaned back. So how many restaurants do you run now? 4. Wow, that must pay pretty well. It pays the bills. Brooke laughed. She's always being modest. Mom nodded. Diana never tells people how successful she really is. Again? Another reminder. Another brick added to the wall they were quietly building around me. The atmosphere felt strange, almost rehearsed, like everyone already knew their role. Every compliment, every question, every joke pointed in exactly the same direction, toward my bank account, toward my career, toward what they believed I owed them. I hadn't ordered dinner, I hadn't chosen the restaurant, I hadn't invited 16 people. Yet somehow, I was beginning to feel like the guest of honor at my own financial intervention. And deep inside, a quiet voice kept repeating the same warning. Something is coming. The longer I sat at that table, the more I realized this wasn't a family reunion. It was a performance. And every person around me already knew their lines. The appetizers disappeared. Fresh platters replaced empty ones. Wine glasses were never allowed to stay empty for long. Nathan moved from one end of the table to the other, balancing trays with practiced precision. Each time he passed me, he quietly refilled my sparkling water. Nothing else. No steak, no lobster, no dessert order. Just water. I noticed him glance toward me once or twice. Not because he was curious, because he understood. Restaurant people notice things. We always do. We know when someone is celebrating. We know when someone is arguing. And we definitely know when someone at a table doesn't belong with the rest. Nathan knew. He didn't know the story, but he knew something wasn't right. Meanwhile, my family kept talking, mostly about money. Not directly, never directly. Instead, they wrapped it inside compliments, inside jokes, little comments that sounded harmless. Aunt Linda smiled across the table. It must be nice not having to worry about bills anymore. I gave a polite smile. Everybody worries about bills, she laughed, some more than others. Several people chuckled. Brooke sipped her wine. I wish I had Diana's salary, Mom quickly added. She worked very hard. Then she looked at me. And family has always supported you. Supported me. I almost laughed. Supported me? I'd started working at 17, bought my own groceries, paid my own college tuition, covered family emergencies, paid deposits, paid repairs, paid wedding expenses. But somehow, the story had changed. Now, they had supported me. Amazing how memory changes when someone wants another check. The second bottle of Bordeaux arrived. Dad smiled proudly as Nathan uncorked it. Only the best tonight. The cork popped, wine poured, glasses lifted, everyone toasted. Except me. I simply raised my sparkling water. Nathan caught my eye. He gave the smallest nod, professional, respectful. Then he walked away. Dinner continued. Stories, laughter, fake warmth. Every few minutes, someone brought the conversation back to me. So, how many employees work under you? What's your bonus like? You probably travel all the time now. You must make incredible money. Question after question, never rude, never obvious, but together they painted one picture. Diana has money, and tonight, Diana is paying. I answered every question calmly, short answers, no details, no bragging, no excuses. The less I said, the more uncomfortable they became, because they wanted confirmation. They wanted me to admit I could easily afford tonight. I wasn't giving them that. About 40 minutes into dinner, I finally stood, "Excuse me, I'll be right back." Nobody paid much attention. Brooke was laughing at something on her phone. Dad was carving another steak. Mom was busy telling Aunt Linda about someone's new kitchen renovation. I quietly walked toward the hallway leading to the restrooms. The moment the restroom door closed behind me, I finally exhaled. Silence. No laughter. No pressure. Just running water and the quiet hum of the air conditioner. I walked over to the sink, turned on the cold water. Splashing my wrists had always helped calm my nerves. Restaurant life teaches you little tricks like that. I stared into the mirror. "You can leave?" I whispered to myself. Right now. Nobody could stop me. I owed them nothing. I reached for a paper towel. Then something caught my attention. A phone. Lying on the marble counter. Pink case. Covered in tiny daisy stickers. Brooke's phone. She'd obviously left it behind. The screen was still glowing. I wasn't trying to look. I truly wasn't. But a notification appeared across the top. A group chat. One I'd never seen before. Dinner plan. 3 members. Mom, Dad, Brooke. The newest message preview stopped me cold. "Don't tell Diana it's everyone." My heartbeat slowed. Not faster. Slower. The kind of calm that comes right before absolute certainty. I picked up the phone. Not out of anger, out of confirmation. The notification disappeared, revealing the conversation underneath. I read the full message. "Don't tell Diana it's everyone. Once she's here with the whole family watching, she won't dare say no." I stared at the words. Then I kept scrolling. Dad replied, "Make sure she sits across from me. I'll handle the ask." A few minutes later, Brooke answered, "Order the expensive stuff before she gets there. Once it's already on the table, she can't send it back." Then a laughing emoji. My hands never shook. Not once. I kept reading. Reservation details, guest confirmations, wine selections, discussions about who should arrive early, who would distract me, who would keep the conversation friendly. Everything had been planned. Weeks earlier. Then I found the message that explained everything. "Mom, 8 days before dinner. The bank called again. We need money before June." Dad answered, "Diana can cover us through spring. She's got more than enough." I felt something inside me become perfectly still. Not heartbreak. Not anger. Clarity. One final message. From Mom. We're not asking for money. We're giving her a chance to be part of the family again. She should be grateful. Grateful. For being manipulated. Grateful. For being ambushed. Grateful. For paying 16 people's luxury dinner. I slowly placed Brooke's phone exactly where I'd found it. Screen down, untouched. Then I washed my hands, looked at myself in the mirror one last time, and quietly smiled. For the first time all evening, I understood exactly what was happening. More importantly, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I opened the restroom door and walked back toward the dining room. Only now, I wasn't walking into their trap. I was walking out of it. When I walked back into the dining room, nothing had changed. At least, not for them. Laughter still echoed across the table. Wine glasses clinked together. Plates kept arriving from the kitchen. The performance continued, exactly as planned. Only one thing was different. Me, a few minutes earlier, I'd been wondering whether I was imagining things. Now, I knew the truth. Every smile, every compliment, every kind word, every expensive order, it had all been calculated. I returned to my seat. Mom smiled warmly. "There you are. We were wondering where you went." "I just needed a minute," I replied. She nodded, completely unaware that I had already seen everything. Brooke barely looked up from her phone. Dad was laughing with Uncle Greg. Linda reached across the table and smiled. "Everything all right, sweetheart?" I smiled back. "Better than ever." Nobody noticed the difference, but I did. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sitting at that table as their daughter. I was sitting there as an observer, watching, listening, learning. Dad raised another toast to family. Everyone lifted their glasses. I lifted my sparkling water. Nothing more. Nathan quietly appeared beside me. He topped off my glass without interrupting anyone. As he turned to leave, I thanked him. Again, he smiled. "You're very welcome." Then he disappeared into the dining room. Watching him reminded me of something. Restaurant staff noticed patterns. Nathan had watched this table for nearly 2 hours. He had seen who ordered everything, who demanded extra butter, who complained, who interrupted, and who had ordered absolutely nothing. He already knew more than my family realized. Dessert menus arrived, without hesitation. Orders started flying: creme brulee, chocolate souffle, cheesecake, tiramisu, bread pudding. No one asked about prices. No one cared. Because someone else was expected to pay. I quietly closed my menu. I'm fine. Mom looked surprised. "No dessert?" "I'm good." Brooke laughed. "Come on, Diana. Live a little. I am." She rolled her eyes. The desserts arrived 20 minutes later, beautiful, expensive, completely unnecessary. Everyone dug in immediately. I simply watched. Every extra bite, every extra bottle, every unnecessary order made one thing crystal clear. This wasn't desperation. This was entitlement. Then Brooke leaned back in her chair. She'd had enough wine that the careful version of herself began disappearing. She smiled at me, a slow, confident smile. "Relax. It's only dinner," she shrugged. "You can afford it." The words landed softly, but they echoed through the entire table. Nobody corrected her. Nobody looked surprised, because everyone already knew. She had simply said the quiet part out loud. I looked directly at her. "Afford what?" She laughed. "This." She gestured around the table, the food, the wine, the whole night. "We figured." She paused long enough to grin. "Since you're treating." Silence. Instantly, forks stopped moving. Even the conversations at nearby tables seemed to disappear. Mom's eyes flashed toward Brooke. Too soon. Dad cleared his throat. Uncle Greg suddenly became fascinated by his dessert. Nobody denied it, because they couldn't. The secret had already escaped. Nathan walked over carrying another bottle of sparkling water. He stopped beside me, quietly refilled my glass, then looked around the table. He felt it too. The tension, the silence, the shift. Without saying a word, he walked away. I watched him disappear toward the service station. Then I looked back at my family. 16 people. Not one of them had objected. Not one of them had said, "That's not why we're here." Not one person corrected Brooke. Because Brooke had spoken the truth. Dinner continued. Barely. Conversations became shorter. People laughed a little harder than necessary. Everyone was waiting for the moment, the check. Then Cousin Megan tried to break the awkward silence. She smiled politely. "So, Diana, I heard you're running all 4 restaurants now." "I am." "That's incredible. What exactly do you do?" I answered honestly. "I oversee operations, staff, budgets, vendor contracts, financial reporting, pretty much everything." Several people exchanged quick glances. Budgets, financial reporting. Those words changed something. They suddenly remembered who I actually was. Not just the successful daughter, someone who worked with numbers every single day, someone who understood invoices, margins, costs, someone who could estimate tonight's bill without ever seeing it. I noticed Dad studying me. His expression changed. Just slightly, like he suddenly realized I might see through the entire evening. Still, he stayed committed. He smiled, finished his dessert, folded his napkin, then rested both hands calmly on the table. I recognized that posture immediately. Growing up, it always meant one thing: a serious conversation was about to begin. The room gradually became quiet. Everyone looked toward Dad. He smiled at me, calm, confident, completely certain that the next few words would end exactly the way he expected. I already knew they wouldn't.